Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee Class with Young Screenwriters. We are an online resource and community for up-and-coming screenwriters, and today is our 50th coffee class.
Oh my God.
Wait, that's today? Oh shit.
Today,
I was not paying attention. Oh man, that's exciting.
Wow.
Almost at a year. We're getting pretty close. Pretty weird.
Wow.
It is kind of weird. Really?
I know, we've been getting some ideas about how we should celebrate our anniversary. And one of the ideas was that we would do a game where we all see who knows the most about each other's lives.
Oh, I'd fail that one.
You would?
Yeah.
I don't feel.
Adam doesn't care.
I don't think I've done a good job on like asking you about your childhood, John. You know.
I didn't have one.
No, he was born like this. Yeah.
Thrust on the world to Benjamin Button, you know?
Yeah. My childhood. Actually, I bet you know. Yeah. And well, you've got a pretty interesting. Both of you have more interesting backgrounds than I do, but that's, I think. And Alexie, heavy sigh.
Oh yeah.
Interesting's not always better, John.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's true. Is interesting preferable? Time will tell.
I don't know.
But
that'd be a funny. That would be a funny game.
Yeah. But we got a good movie this week.
We do.
Yeah.
This was actually this film is noteworthy for me in that it was the first film I ever tried to break down on my own to understand. In like 2008, I like wrote down on note cards everything that happened in the movie, and I totally got it wrong. Because I didn't know what I was looking for. Because when you don't know, you don't know, you don't know. So, but yeah, I really responded to this film a lot when I was younger. I was like, oh wow, this is so well written. That's a thing.
It's also for somebody who, for the first time, it's a very difficult film to break.
It is, yeah.
I mean, this is the wrong one to start out with.
It is the wrong.
Yeah.
But I was at that time where I was like attracted to like this type of voice at that time for maybe the wrong reasons. Like I was definitely at a time where I was distracted by stylistic choices and not really be able to understand the substance of like what character and story was. So, but yeah, also a hard film to do, but it's a great film.
I love this film.
It's one of Wes Anderson's second feature.
It's his second feature, but it's the first feature that he did where he like was totally aligned as a director and as a writer, and like it's a film that like, oh, this is what's to come, you know.
Yeah, it
I actually
felt
like
Wes Anderson.
Yeah,
like yeah, it's interesting though. Owen Wilson always like I feel like I don't recognize his name in the context of writer because I didn't know enough before. So when I first saw it was like by Wes Anderson and Owen Wilson. I didn't even make the Owen Wilson connection. I was just like, a different Owen Wilson.
Didn't they go to college together in Texas, right?
Yeah, they were roommates for a period of time, and they broke into their first movie was Bottle Rocket, which and Owen Wilson also co-wrote Royal Tenenbaums.
Right.
And basically, then he never wrote anything ever again.
Wow.
What was the line? There was an interview that was really funny. Somebody asked him, "Was like, oh, when are you going to write some more?" He's like, you know, writing sucks. It's a shitty job. You spend forever, like I'm paraphrasing. You basically spend forever working you spend years working hard to get something that's like 90 minutes that somebody forgets about. And if you act, you show up 1 month, you know, you get paid way more, you know.
He's not wrong.
He was joking, but like not really joking, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's a tough. You gotta love it, right?
You gotta love it.
That's how it goes.
And Wes Anderson clearly does love it, and he's really good at it.
Yeah, he's what I like about him. The way I describe Wes Anderson to somebody who like who knows about him as a director, but maybe not as a writer. I think of him as he's like, how should I say this? Dry Texas, you know, educated Texas, sardonic Americana mixed with like obsession of like European, like ornate style. Like he loves French New Wave, but he grew up reading Peanuts. Like it's a really weird combination of things.
But you don't expect him to be from Texas.
No, but
No,
it makes perfect sense when you find out he was. Like it makes sense.
I always, I mean, to me, when I see his film, I always think, if I didn't know that he's either from New Hampshire or Connecticut.
Yeah, that tracks too. But like he had to be from Texas.
I mean, you know,
it's like if you said New Hampshire, Connecticut, you'd be like, that makes sense. But then you say Texas, and you go, no. Okay, it's one of those things.
But the reason it makes sense for me is that somebody who's from the suburbs of Houston probably and like wants to be a filmmaker wants nothing to do with the suburbs of Houston, and like this is a guy who's like looking everywhere else. I don't know. I'm just psychoanalyzing him. I've never met him.
I mean, do you think there are do you see a lot of people in the suburbs of Houston wearing corduroy suits? I don't know. I don't think.
But the kid who got away, he
was dying to find a place where he could wear a corduroy suit. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Do you want to break it?
I'll break it. Yeah, let's do it. So this film opens with a scene from this school. It's a classroom, and this geometry teacher is writing an equation on the board. One of the students asks him, what's that equation over on the other board that says extra credit? And he says, oh, that's the hardest geometry equation problem in the world. I just put it up as a joke. But if one of you could solve it, I'll make sure that you'll never have to do any homework ever again. And the kids murmur, Max is Max. And, we meet Max Fisher, who says, does somebody say my name? He comes up, solves the problem, and everybody cheers his name. And then we find out it was a dream. He's napping in chapel during some donor's speech. And immediately, not even like a few minutes in the movie, we know a lot about who this person is, what they care about. Max, we quickly learn he's a poor student who is obsessed with extracurricular activities. He clearly dreams of being admired. He clearly cares about how he's perceived in a, hyper ambitious, maybe distorted way. But in the chapel, we meet Herman Bloom, Bill Murray's character, and he's giving a speech. He says, "Take dead aim on the rich boys. They can buy anything, but they can't buy backbone. Get them in your crosshairs and take them down." And Max is like taking down notes. And after the speech, he goes up to him and says, I think you're right about Rushmore. And walks away, and Bloom looks at him and is like, wow, what an unusually bright, inquisitive kid. And the dean of the school says to him, he's one of the worst students we've got. And we go into this great montage of, that's a contrast to that sentence of he's one of the worst students we got. Q, he's the president of every single club, the calligraphy club, the beekeeping club, every single thing you could imagine at this really bougie private school. This guy has got his fingers in, but still being the worst student we've got. We have a very clear sense of what this person's situation is, what his normal world is. And we then have this great scene with Guggenheim, the dean, and Max, where Guggenheim says, you're on a sudden death academic probation, Max. You've got to bring your grades up, cut down the extracurriculars, or you're going to have to leave Rushmore. And Max replies with a, well, I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but if this means I have to take on a postgraduate year, we don't offer a postgraduate year. It's a great push and pull. It reveals a lot about who this guy is. This is somebody who really doesn't mind putting an extraordinary amount of work into the things he's decided he wants to do, like organizing people, putting together an organization, being all to maybe be perceived a certain way, but doing homework, turning in the paper, not so much. So he's the king of extracurricular activities at Rushmore, doesn't want to put any effort into school. We find out that his dad is a barber, though he constantly lies that he's a brain surgeon. And this is very clearly the most indicative part of his flaw. He's ashamed of where he comes from, and he doesn't find honor or respect in the ordinary. And that's something he's going to learn his inner need later on. But I wouldn't mark the Guggenheim academic probation as the inciting incident. I would actually mark the inciting incident as when he finds in the library, he's having this conversation with another student saying, hey, we're finally getting rid of Latin. He's like, I tried to get rid of Latin for 5 years. But the book he's reading, he sees an inscription. And we hear ocean noises, which is sort of a subtle detail I'll bring up later. But and he wants to find out who wrote this moving inscription in this Jacques Cousteau book. And he goes to the library and he finds out that this was last checked out by Rosemary Cross, who's one of the kindergarten or first grade teachers at Rushmore. And he looks through the window and he sort of seems enamored with her. And we see Max, he's flirting with his chapel partner, Dirk's mom in the car, flirting, and after she leaves, Herman Bloom drives up to pick up his kids, Ronnie and Donnie, and he asks Max, you seem to have it pretty figured out. What's the secret? And he says, what did he say? Well, I guess you just got to find something you want to do for the rest of your life and just do it. For me, that thing's going to Rushmore. This guy's clearly got some cognitive dissonance, but we move on to Mrs. Cross is on the bleachers, and Max sort of approaches her with this really stupid beret, and he seems to be reading a book way above his comprehension level. And they sort of have a conversation. He's clearly trying to play himself up, and she asks him, "Oh, where do you want us to go to school?" He says, "Oh, Oxford and the Sorbonne. My safety's Harvard." Did you hear they're going to cancel Latin? She says to him, "Oh, that's a shame. Nihilo sanctum esse." He says, "What's that?" "Oh, it's Latin, is it?" He says, "Is nothing sacred?" And this is a great moment that's so representative of Max. He thinks of the only Latin phrase he could probably think of is "sic transit gloria." Glory fades. I'm Max Fisher. It doesn't have anything to do with the conversation, but glory fades, We then go to a scene with Herman Bloom sitting next to Mac at what's it called, wrestling match, and he's looking at his two kids who are just like brutally beating the crap out of each other. And he says, "Never in my wildest imagination did I ever think I would have sons like these. What does your dad do, Max?" And he says, "Oh, he's brain surgeon, yada 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 yada." And Bloom, he seems to have a connection with Max. He sort of asks him, "Come work for me. I could use a kid like you or guy like you around." Max says, it's a great line, "My father may only be a brain surgeon, but we manage," and sort of says no. And we're intercutting between this plot line of Herman and Max coming together and Rosemary and Max coming together. Max clearly wanting to get to know Rosemary's more, and also, but these are the two lines of action that we're intercutting between. But after the wrestling scene, we have the scene where Max is sort of bonding with Rosemary, and they're like in her room, in her classroom, and we see fish in their little aquarium that taking care of. And he sort of has this idea that, I'm going to build an aquarium so I can get closer to her. And he sort of I've got the order mixed up. He saves the Latin program first, but he goes in this scene. He made all these petitions to the organization, and they decided to reinstate Latin after his conversation with Rosemary. He goes when he's feeding the fish with her, says, they're going to continue the Latin program. She's like, "I'm pretty impressed. That's cool. Wow, you based on one conversation sort of put it together." And she mentioned she had her dad's husband, and he mentions his dead mom. Hey, we both have dead people in our families. This is when Max decides to build the aquarium. So he goes to Bloom, who after adopted, instead of saying, "Yes, I'll work for you," he says, "So I want $35,000 for the initial plans for this aquarium. It'll have piranha, it'll have barracuda." And Bloom says, "I'll give you $2,500. Okay. He begins to research and prep for the aquarium, drinks lemonade with Mrs. Cross, in this really awkward, great scene where he's sitting across from her, and she's very clearly like trying to be like, okay, you're interesting and I like you, but like, I'm the teacher and you're a 15-year-old student. Do not misconstrue this. She says, it ever crossed your mind? You're far too young to me. He says, oh yeah, sure. We're just friends. And he says, can we shake hands? They shake hands. Very creepy in retrospect in 2021. But Max argues with the cast of his new play, just of course, just casually. He's got these elaborate plays, like reinterpreting, I think it's Serpico, and throughout the whole movie, all the Max Fisher players are doing recreations of famous 70s movies. And he's arguing with the play, and at the after party for the play, Rosemary has brought a date, Luke Wilson. I forgot the actual character's name, but and Max is clearly put off by this, and he gives him a lot of like real kind of abuse, and he starts to get tipsy, and he says like, "You've hurt my feelings. You know, why could you bring him?" You know, he sort of said, "Well, he gives a great line." He says, "I got punched in the face. What's your excuse? Like, what's wrong with your face?" Bloom apologizes. Adam, forget his name. Yeah, thanks, Alexie, typing sass in the bottom. Bloom tries to defuse the situation and apologizes.
It was a joke because you forgot his name like he did over and over. Adam forgot his name.
That's good.
I know. So there you go.
So we're almost through these sort of narrative, and then we're going to talk about my structural problems with this. Although I do love the movie. There's a lot of, and then this happens, and then this happens in Act 1. Max, after, getting drunk and sort of, spills his guts, and he says, "I love you." And, Rosemary's like, okay, I'm going to push him away for the time being. And the next day, when he's unveiling the aquarium, the groundbreaking on the baseball diamond, he's kind of upset that, doesn't seem like she's going to show up, even though he invited her. And as he starts the groundbreaking, Guggenheim stops him and says, "Max, what are you doing? What are you doing?" He clearly didn't clear this with the school. He didn't. The fact that he got this far without somebody notifying the administration is kind of crazy. But Guggenheim stops the ceremony, and we cut to a boardroom with Dirk looking through behind the glass, and it's clear that Max is getting expelled from Rushmore. And this is what I believe is the Act 1 break into Act 2. It's about 35 minutes into the movie. And from this moment, we're pretty clear that Max's objective is a relationship with Miss Cross. Do I think hypothetically I would have made it something a little more tangible? Maybe, but that's functionally what it is for Act 2. As Max goes into the public school, Grover Cleveland High School, he's asked to give a speech. He says, "I notice you don't have a fencing team. I'll start one up for you guys." He's clearly out of his, he is clearly not clear on how he's perceived and the cultural difference of his old private school that he loved and, regular American public schools. And this is where we meet Margaret Yang, who sort of says like, "Wow, everyone's ever asked to say, make a speech before in class. That's impressive." He doesn't seem very interested in her. But in Act 2, this is the new world where Max is no longer a student at Rushmore. The one thing he's loved is taken away from him, and he's trying to get closer to Ms. Fisher. And from this point forward, Bloom and Mrs. Cross are slowly sort of becoming. There are a lot of montages with them all hanging out together. You sort of see this growing intimacy between the two adults that Max is kind of a naive kid, has absolutely no clue about. And Max calls Mrs. Bloom. Max calls Bloom about Mrs. Cross. Like, do you think you can get her to like, you can apologize on my behalf? And Bloom sort of got on the phone and says, "I don't think she's right for you. You shouldn't, don't go there." We have a really important scene where Magnus, who's the Scottish bully character with the cast, he confronts Max, and as Max is sort of loitering around campus. He said, like, everything you do, your big show and no results. And Max sort of is a little, tweaked by this. And he tells Magnus that Dirk's mom gave him a hand job in her Jaguar, which Magnus rightly says he calls a lie. And like Max's proclivity to overrepresent himself, oversell himself, because he's desperate to be perceived a certain way. This is his undoing later on. But Max eventually apologizes to Miss Cross, and he shows her the library book that her husband Edward Appleby used to own, and she donated back to the school on his behalf. And she tells him, "You remind me of him," and he seems like a little like, "Oh wow, maybe I have a chance," Max, Mrs. Cross tutors Max, and Bloom gets closer to her. While this is the what I was talking about before. There's this great moment in the montage where it's like you see like Max making a real effort. He goes to the science fair. He's got this horrible exhibit because he's a terrible student, and he's got this great moment where his teacher hands him a test and it's a C-, and he looks over to her and she like looks at him like, "Well done." I love that. Max casts Margaret in his new play. And at this moment, Bloom starts an affair with Mrs. Cross. This awesome scene where he's standing outside of her house and like, "Do Max have something planned for us today?" And she's got like this plate of like thinly sliced carrots for some reason. And she asks him, do you want a carrot? And he says, "Yeah, I'll have one of those." And he takes it. He munches on a carrot. Bill Murray's so charismatic. It's a weird scene if you look at it, but it works for some reason. And Dirk sees Bloom exiting Rosemary's house, and he confronts Bloom. And this great scene where he says, he's like, "I thought you were his friend." He says, "I am his friend. With friends like you, who needs friends?" And he spits on his car. Magnus, who we were talking about earlier, saw this exchange, and he says, "You're backing the wrong horse, Dirk. Max is only hanging out with you. He's not your real friend. He's only hanging out with you because he thinks your mother is a piece." And Dirk says, "That's a lie." And Magnus quite rightly says, "Well, what do I know? The son of a brain doctor doesn't need to impress anyone, does he?" And this seems to sort of twist the night for Dirk. And we get to the midpoint, which is a great one, actually. I think this is one of the moments that really makes the movie work. Dirk writes to Max in a crayon, or in a very humble, like little kid letter, with clear misperceptions about what certain sexual activities are. He says, "I saw Ms. Cross and Bloom giving each other hand jobs and skinny dipping while you were asleep on the pool," and basically, totally, trying to hurt Max's feelings in over exaggerating the affair. We have this another amazing scene where Max is inside of Bloom's car as he's coming out of Cross's house and scares him. And basically Max declares war on Bloom, being like, "She doesn't love you. It's impossible." And he walks outside of Bloom's car and he says, "I saved Latin. What did you ever do?" Which is a great thing to say to a steel tycoon as a 15-year-old. Anyway, and this is for after the midpoint, the stakes get higher, and we have a new world where Max and Bloom are now at war, and Max is starting to burn all the bridges in his life. Dirk, Bloom, Miss Cross later on. So basically, Max tells Bloom's wife about the fair, which gets him kicked out. Bloom moves into a hotel, which Max has booby-trapped with bees from the Beekeeping Society. And there's this great look where Bill Murray like looks at the bees and the tube coming out, and he has this look of like, "Oh, it's on. I'm going to go all out on this 15-year-old. He goes to Max's school, takes his bike, runs it over. Max cuts Mr. Bloom's brakes to his car. Bloom reports Max to the police. And Max gets carted away by the police in slow motion outside of the high school. And as Max is going back to Rushmore, Dirk and his friends pelt Max with rocks and tell him he's basically not welcome at Rushmore. And Max tells Guggenheim about the affair, but he tells Max that she resigned this morning. He's like, why did you let her go? She's one of the best teachers he ever had. It's like, why are you trying to get her fired? It's this great scene. And this is sort of where we get to the end of Act 2, where Miss Cross, with her packing up her things in her office, basically confronts Max and calls him on his shit, and really freaks him out. She sort of says, I'm sorry I love my friend instead of you. You're a 15-year-old. What did you think was going to happen? You know, and basically his whole perception of her is completely shattered, and his sort of 15-year-old delusions, you know, meet adult reality. It's a very uncomfortable scene, but I do think it's well written. And as he leaves and runs away, Max and Magnus fight. Magnus beats the crap out of him, and as Max is lying in the ground and Dirk's above him, Dirk just walks away from him. And Bloom and Max sort of have a truce, a quasi-truth, where they meet at his mother's grave, and Max was going to have a tree fall on top of Bloom. And Bloom says to Max, maybe in language he understands, she's my Rushmore, Max. Yeah, she was mine too. We go into Act 3, where Max is given up on school. He's basically decided to just sort of give up on all his life ambitions and be a barber's son. The line is when he's eating, or when he's working in his dad's barber shop, his dad asks him, hey, you know, didn't you want to be like a senator or something? He says, pipe dreams, Dad. I'm a barber's son. And Dirk comes in and sort of gives him a peace offering of an inscribed Swiss Army knife, though Max is still pretty deflated. Max visits Dr. Guggenheim in the hospital, who had a stroke, and he wakes up from the strokes from the trauma of hearing Max's voice. It's the first time he's spoken in 10 days. And Max tries to see Rosemary, Ms. Cross, by faking a car accident. And basically, he sort of sees how obsessed she is over her trauma and her grief, and kind of what a broken person she is. And she was explaining why Bloom and her, she dumped Bloom basically. And she says, there's a great line, I'm going to paraphrase. Oh, my Edward had more life and vitality in one fingernail than Herman Bloom has in his entire body. And Max says, one dead fingernail. Good line. And my favorite scene in the movie, the end of the All Is Lost sequence, where Max is sort of starting to have a shift. He's starting to realize his inner need. He's invited Bloom to meet him outside of his dad's barbershop, although Herman doesn't know that because he still thinks Max's dad is a brain doctor. And he brings him into the barbershop, and he introduces Herman to his dad. This is my dad. He's a barber. And you see this expression on Herman's Bloom's face of like, oh, I understand. Nice to meet you. And they have this really great scene where he gives him a haircut. I love that scene. Anyway, we go in sort of the all or nothing, where there's some renewed energy, where Max wants to get Bloom and Rosemary Cross together again. Bloom and Max collaborate to build a new aquarium at Rushmore, this time with actual money. Max founds a kite flying club at his school with Margaret and Dirk. I don't know if it's quite at the school, if Dirk was participating, but it doesn't matter. And he invites Rosemary Cross to the aquarium groundbreaking, but she doesn't show up. And Bloom does the exact same thing that Max did in the beginning, which is sort of run off and sort of be like, oh, why did I do this? Spent $8 million on an aquarium. And Max calls him out and says, you're a quitter, man. And afterwards, when Max sort of goes to Ms. Cross to sort of say, hey, why didn't you show up? He really, Herman, he built this aquarium for you. She says, I never asked anyone to build me an aquarium. I'm not sure how that rumor got started. And I thought it was your idea. And he says, I gave it to my friend, which I love. Max asks Magnus, the bully he was fighting with earlier, to have a part in his new play. And Magnus says, I thought you'd never ask. And Max gets all the principal characters together for a debut Vietnam play based on Bloom's experience. We had a throwaway line earlier. It was like, "Were you in the shit?" Yeah, I was in the shit. So it's clearly a reference to that, dedicated to Bloom. And he dedicates it to his mother. All the characters are there. You see Max, you see Dirk, you see Margaret, everybody. And the play has a few technical difficulties, but Max is assigned Miss Cross and Bloom to sit next to each other. And there's this great scene that I believe is inspired by a scene in Barry Lyndon from the director's commentary, it doesn't matter, where they're outside together, and they have with their little paper cup coffees, and they have a moment of sort of reconciliation. And Max and Margaret punctuate the end of the play dramatically. And Herman's crying, and sort of at the post-show, gathering in the gym, we see all the characters, everybody, sort of dancing and talking. We meet Margaret's parents. It's just sort of this nice release of sort of like everything's resolved. And Margaret, Bloom, Max, and Rosemary all sort of pair down together and talk. Bloom goes off with Margaret, and it's finally Max and Miss Cross. They talk alone, and they have this great moment. And he basically says, "I didn't get hurt that bad." And he requests a DJ to play a specific song, and they dance together, and everybody dances, and it's all happy. Anyway, that's Rushmore. Sorry, that's a messy film. It's so character based. There's a lot of non-linear stuff.
It's
a difficult one.
Great job. It's you did a great job. It's a demanding script. I love the movie.
Yeah.
What do you think, Alexie?
I think it was good, and there was a lot of moments that I really liked. I think Max's character has some things that are just too cringe for, like, they were probably cringe back when it was made too, but like now we like accept the fact that they're cringe as what they are. But and that made it a little like, I was kind of like, you're not likable, dude. Like, you're not. But I felt that he was supposed to be somewhat more sympathetic than I was feeling. That was my main hang up.
Yeah,
but
I think that's definitely real. I do think he's not supposed to be like a good person.
Right.
That's intentional, but I do think he's supposed to be like endearing in the aspect of he's so creative and ambitious in a particular way. Like there's definitely like a character signifier of being like, oh, we like ambitious people who found 50 clubs and are so committed. We like competency.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's a deeply selfish, delusional person. But that being said, he's supposed to fix that, right? But
yeah. But no, I thought it was like, there was a lot of moments where I didn't laugh, but I said, oh, that's really funny. And it felt like that was kind of the movie for me.
Well, that's Wes Anderson. There's a lot of but like a high density of, and most movies are like, okay, that's funny. Yeah, I get what they're trying to do. They actually goes,
makes you smile slightly.
Smile slightly, but that's the type of humor it is. It's like low, slow burner, small laughs, but like a lot of them. Strung together. There's a charm. It's charming.
Yeah, I guess that's the word. It's like, it's charming throughout, and I never like laughed out loud, but it was amusing throughout.
I will say, as somebody who's been a big fan of Wes Anderson's for a long time, his movies are very rewatchable because there's so many details. Like a detail I never got before was when, after the dinner, when that scene where Rosemary's helping that kid painting and Bloom goes up to her to like sort of give like Max's letter. At the end, he's clearly like enamored with her. At the end of the conversation, he turns around and he just sprints.
Yeah.
Like,
he
just
runs.
Erupts into a sprint, and it's so weird. It's like this detail that's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
John, what did you think?
I love the film. I also love the fact that Wes Anderson gets away with it. Yeah. You can see why he has to direct his own material, because it's so his voice. Adam, I think, accurately pointed out the carrot scene at Rosemary's front door. Adding the carrot to that scene makes no sense unless you're in Wes Anderson's world. Also,
like, she had it on a plate, and they were like thinly sliced, like 4.
And do you want?
Thinly
Would you
sliced
like
carrots.
a carrot? Yeah,
Like,
If
was
she
so
brought it to
weird.
the door, like if I just had a snack and someone knocked at my door, would you carry your carrots to the door? Usually not.
No,
yeah,
not at all.
And by the way, on that note, here's something I want to talk about, because again, a quirky is the word that comes to mind for me anyway as I watch Wes Anderson film, and you kind of sign on. So that opening scene, Adam, which you talked about, and is such a great opening scene. And for my money, here's why. We launch into the movie. That's an extra credit problem. Max goes to the front of the room, does the problem. He's applauded. We, the audience, are watching him thinking, this kid is a genius. This kid is brilliant. And then we smash cut to him being asleep in the church or wherever he is, and we realize it's all a dream. So what that scene is so well done and so necessary to the film, because what it says to us is you have a completely unreliable narrator. Nothing will be as it seems. Your protagonist will continually lie throughout the film. So that means, and this may be, tell me if you think this is too great a leap, but that's why, again, I'll go back to 2 scenes that Adam accurately picked out. Oh, that's why when the carrot scene, and also the scene when Bill Murray comes out of the house and Max is sitting in the back seat of his Rolls Royce. Now that scene is not really plausible.
No.
But what they've done with the opening scene, what they've done with the opening scene is they said, don't worry about plausibility. Expect the unexpected. Everything's going to be quirky. You will not hold us accountable for aspects of this film that do not make sense.
It's a cartoon.
It's a cartoon. And that's what makes it brilliant. And that's why opening scenes are so important. And this opening scene is dead on. Dead on the money.
I do love, like, after that opening scene, the end of the conversation where Guggenheim says he's one of the worst students we've got. Like, you're not even 5 pages into it. Like that, the contrast of how we might misconstrue him to be to, oh shit, this guy, we see his report card, it's like 4750, like really he's for somebody who's
yeah.
You know what? That's such a good choice, because they were going to make him fail at, like, he was going to get kicked out of the school regardless. Like, he didn't get kicked out for his grades. So that was just a character choice. And it was such a good one to, like, make him be the extracurricular king, but not a good student. I feel like it would have been really easy to just make him like a super student, Yeah. And I feel like that, I could see that choice being made in a draft by someone else or an earlier draft.
Yeah, going back to Alexie, something you said earlier, Max is not highly likable, but he's highly watchable.
Yeah.
And a lot of times this comes up in screenwriting classes. Does my protagonist have to be likable? And the answer is no. The answer is that, but we must be willing to follow them. We must be willing to say, I'm going to follow you because God only knows what's going to happen. Somebody said, I'm paraphrasing badly, somebody said way back when, that the reason that Jack Nicholson was a movie star is that you knew at some point he would blow up. And so you're willing to watch him because he will explode. I'm willing to watch Max because, by the way, one of the scenes I love also, Adam, is when Brian Cox calls him in and says, "I'm going to kick you out," and he says, "To anybody else in the world, I'm going to kick you out of school." They're like, "Oh my God, no, no!" And then he says something like, "What does he say, Adam? You know better than I."
He said he tries to pitch him. Well, I don't want to tell you how to do your job.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a guy. Yeah, I don't take your job, and I'll do a postgrad. But when he says postgraduate, you're sitting there going, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
We don't offer postgraduate
Yeah.
yet.
And he says, Brian Cox says, "We don't have a postgraduate."
And he says, "Well, we don't offer one yet."
That's like the Lady Bird scene.
So
it is like the Lady Bird scene.
It's like the Lady Bird scene.
It is like a Lady Bird scene. But by the way, I mean the other thing that I love about the scene, and you're catching me halfway through my spring semester when I'm particularly sensitive to lazy students and students who don't take a lot of care with their scripts. Magnus and Dirk are gorgeous. When they appear on screen, I melt because Wes Anderson has taken great care to lay them in. Just lay them in. And when Magnus, and Adam, I'm repeating everything you said, forgive me, but
repeat away.
But when Magnus says, "I've always wanted to be in your play," you go, "Oh shit, yes, oh my God!" And he's in a stamp, but there's one shot where he's up in a tree with that Bowie knife and his broken arm, and you go, "What? Wait! Does Brian Cox know that kid has a Bowie knife and he's up in a tree?" I mean, but you don't go there. So, but my point is that when you look at the film, when you look at Dirk and Magnus, and you look at these things, you say, this is a writer who's taken great care with this movie. And I adore that. I adore that because it is the craft. The craft is all there. He's got it, and he's got it so. It's so in his wheelhouse. It's so in his voice that he's not working. He does not appear to be working. But when you break it as Adam did such a great job with, you see that all the work's there. It's all there. Margaret. Oh, when Margaret appeared.
I think she was a little underutilized, in my opinion. I feel like that's something I would probably see. I feel like she didn't get as much of a moment to shine in terms of like doing things. And but then again, they didn't introduce her till like Act 2. So
she says to him, "You treated me so
she had a lot of potential." Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I love that because he did, and so that's why he must end up with her because she called him out.
Well, also she's like his equal at the end. I did like that scene with them dancing, and he's like, "Have you ever? Can you do an Australian accent?" She's like, "Why?" "Well, I'm thinking of doing something set in the Outback." Like he's so confident, and like they're so in each other's energy. Like it's like a relationship that makes sense for him. But more than I think I agree that the side characters are the reason this movie works, and like the people around Max are so lovable, even if he himself isn't.
Yeah.
Let me ask you. This is not a trick question. I don't think I know anything. Well, I can come up with the answer. Is Bill Murray mentor or false mentor?
I think he's an antagonist.
He is. He's an.
I think he's an antagonist.
Let me.
So I have an opinion about this, and I actually think you can interpret this multiple ways. I think the mentor is the dad.
Oh, really?
Not Dirk.
I thought it was Dirk.
Dirk. Well, let me make an argument for Dirk and an argument for it might be Dirk. Yeah, it's Dirk because he shows up and gives him the Swiss Army knife. at the end and in the all's lost. I just think that his dad represents everything about his flaw and inner need, and that he's ashamed of his dad. That is like the core point. He's ashamed of where he comes from. He doesn't think there's any honor in an ordinary life. And that's why he strives to compensate in all these other aspects. Oh, my dad's a brain doctor. Oh, my safety school is Harvard. Oh, I've got all like all of these. He's constantly trying to signal out to the world, I am not a barber's son. I am not a barber's son. I'm not a barber's son. That till finally when he has that scene with Bill Murray. I do think the mentor's Dirk. You guys are right. I wrote it wrong. But
by the way, when he starts working in the barbershop.
That's sad.
Oh man, I love that. And they put him in one of those shirts, that blue funny shirt.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. Isn't it?
Yeah. It was a really good All Is Lost. They definitely crushed him. That was probably like there were parts like it felt like instead of this being like a 90-minute movie, it felt like a 30-minute movie with so much stuff stacked on top of it that it takes 90 minutes.
That is exactly what. So can I explain the problem I had breaking this down at first was I thought there was an inciting incident that happened about 7 minutes in. The scene where he brings the book to Rosemary. That's the inciting incident where, like, oh my God, he meets this woman who changes everything about the story, right? She's the catalyst in his relationship with her, right? That makes sense. But then we have like a mini objective that resolves at the end of Act 1, the aquarium.
But
wait. So like, wait. I know you're gonna sit, but and it ends at 30 minutes in, and when he gets kicked out of school, and I got thrown off the first time because I was like, oh, he's gonna build the aquarium for her.
Isn't the aquarium? She's the objective.
Yes, I think functionally,
and the aquarium is a way to get her.
Yeah, but it's like
as is saving the Latin, huh?
The thing that was weird about it was that this objective only existed in Act 1, and then very at the end for like 5 minutes when he.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist in Act 2. It doesn't exist in Act 2 at all.
He's not pursuing it in Act 2.
He's not pursuing the aquarium at all in Act 2. So that's why,
Yeah. A different version of this would feel more like a 90-minute movie if he was pursuing the aquarium throughout Act 2.
That would be traditional.
That's what.
But I do want to say I do think this works.
I think it works. I just think that like that's kind of why it felt like that to me was because he didn't get the Miss Cross objective really until the aquarium became a thing at the end of Act 1, and that was pretty late. And and then he wasn't really pursuing that for Act 2. He was mostly going after Miss Cross, and the aquarium kind of came back at the end.
Right.
But yeah, for like a brief moment, I was like, is the aquarium the objective? And it's like, no.
No.
Because he's not pursuing it.
Boy wants woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do you know what? Here's another thing that it worked. I love this movie. It really works. There's a thing that is unconventional, and that his objective and the relationship with Miss Cross has almost nothing to do with a lot of the other character stuff of his poor grades, his extracurricular obsessions. It's more just sort of like adjacent.
Yeah.
They are tied to a similar emotional core of he's like the thing of him being him not having honor in an ordinary life and being ashamed of where he comes from isn't really that relevant with Ms. Cross, because his relationship with her, that's not the problem. The problem is he's 15 and that's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is Wes Anderson, the other director who gets away with doing this kind of thing, and it's because they're great directors.
Yeah.
Is what's his name? Sideways, it's
Alexander Payne.
Alexander Payne.
Yeah.
Pain. The Descendants is a great movie, and
John,
Alexander.
John, I have a story about that. And I was at an early screening of that, and I think you get a crick of this. And he was at a Q&A, and there was this person went up to him at the end, and his question was like, "So, Mr. Payne, your first 5 minutes, you open with this huge expositional crawl. Shouldn't have you not done that?" Because it opens with this monologue of George Clooney giving us all this information, and he's basically being like exposition in the movie's bad, Mr. Payne. Shouldn't have you this is right after screening the movie.
Oh my god!
and the answer he gave, which I actually think was a good one, was, "Wow, okay, well, sometimes you have to give people your expositional medicine to continue on with the story, But I thought you get a kick out of that.
God, by the way, I'm cringing.
Are you getting flashbacks to the clown?
Very good, Alexie. Very, very, very. I just wanted to defend myself here. I wasn't that big an asshole.
Yeah,
I didn't tell Larry Kasdan how to make a movie. I just had a question. If anybody, the point of reference is Body Heat, and I was getting I was at AFI, and I asked Larry Kasdan why there was a clown in the movie, and he says, "You know the story." He said, "I've been asked that before, and I never answer it." And all my buddies are like, "Hey, Warren, what the fuck, man? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I want to know why is a clown. I still don't know." Anyway, that Alexie, good memory.
Thanks.
That's
so I do know about your life.
That's so painful.
Yeah, it was really awkward.
And Alexander Payne is a very gracious man.
Here's an interesting question, real quick. Isn't what you're describing a film that's really based on an internal journey rather than an internal plus external journey much more common in coming-of-age films? Yes.
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
Although this did have an external goal, the relationship is a real goal that Max is going after for all of Act 2. That is underpinning. There is a lot of focus on character though, and there are a lot of scenes that have nothing to do with that objective in Act 2, him putting on the play, for example.
There's actually a lot in common with this and Lady Bird.
Yeah, this is a similar film.
Yeah.
And those,
Oh, go ahead.
It's a high wire act. It's a high wire act. I just want to go back for a second to taking care with telling a story. These directors that we're talking about are directors who have incredible finesse, and it is a misperception by some writers that they have Wes Anderson finesse, and that they can do all this internal stuff that isn't necessarily in keeping with theme or keeping with elements of story. If you're not Wes Anderson or Alexander Payne or Baker or one of these Greta Gerwig, if you're not, this thing won't fly. This movie is a high wire act. It's a very, very difficult movie to make.
And I think you said it earlier. It's a director movie.
If
anybody else with this exact same script would have made it, any charm would have gone away in a lot of situations. It would have been a lot. In my opinion, the actual words on the page would have been 20 times cringier. There would have been a weird tonal thing about the underage student. It is that is a high wire act that there were some moments that made me a little uncomfortable. I do think it was justified in the story. I don't feel like they made wrong choice, but that's directing stuff. He made so many choices and performances that felt in line with a safer tone. We never felt like there was going to be abuse, or that there was going to be a line crossed, or that it was creepy in any way. It was because he I think a lot of these readings would have made it more like maybe potentially sexual attraction, and that was not really part of it. Like, there's so many references to hand jobs in this movie, but you never really get a sense the kids know what they are. Like in the letter, they're giving hand jobs to each other. You know, like that is like a charm that I think would be lost with maybe a director who didn't know tonally what they were going for. You know,
it's like they tend to be writer directors, right?
Yeah,
where this might be one of the first films that we know. Like a lot of people didn't know about Greta Gerwig until Lady Bird, but she was doing stuff before. Like she directed before. It wasn't like her first feature, and this wasn't Wes Anderson's first feature. And like in general, that tends to be, I think, how it goes with like the really, you know, specific coming of age things that kind of like me that are like 30-minute movies that have a bunch of things stacked on top of them. And they're tough to write if you're not planning to direct it.
And somebody
and
asked
it's
earlier
bold to plan to direct it if you haven't directed something before. So
absolutely. And again, don't mistake being an incredibly nuanced writer with being a lazy writer. Those are two different things. But I want to go back. There was a question early on about how did he get Bill Murray, which is I don't have the answer. I don't know, but I have no information here, but somebody like Bill Murray who can do whatever he wants and who doesn't need to work, those people are looking for directors. And the beauty of a Bill Murray, any actor in this film, is that you have to say, and this is what happens. This happens, and I keep going back to Payne and Gerwig and these directors. What the actors do is they sign on and they go, "I'm in your hands," because you know what you're doing and nobody else does. You have an approach to this kind of film. You have a voice as a writer-director that I'm going in and I have to trust you, because if I rely on conventional choices, we're gone. So that's a really interesting, and so that's why when Bill Murray, you know, the carrot. By the way, Adam, now you got me obsessed with the damn carrot scene. But the carrot, you know, Bill Murray, you know that he's going in, and even that scene where as you said, he runs away suddenly. You know, Bill Murray has to go, Wes Anderson, I'm in your hands.
Which is a risk.
You want to make. It's a big risk. And they don't do that unless they know that you are one of those few directors who owns the voice.
And here's the interesting, other interesting factoid is this. I feel like for those who don't know necessarily the story of how this movie got made, because Bill Murray loved the script so much. It was on the script's merit. He knew his agent liked Bottle Rocket, but it was the script. He was like, I've never read anything like this. I want to do this. I believe in this. I'll say yes. Like, you have to. Wes Anderson was not well received as a director before this. Bottle Rocket was a horrible bomb, and it had the distinction of being the worst tested movie in Columbia's history. So like, he was not in a position of power when he wrote this. And Bill Murray said yes. Like, if they hadn't gotten somebody like him, this would have never been made, and nothing would have happened.
That's right.
Here's a quick question. I don't know the answer to this. Do you all know? What would you call the cinematography Wes Anderson used during the film?
Yeah. So, I mean, I am not a cinematographer, but as a film fan and film lover, like, he is highly obsessed with wide-angle lenses, cinema, and symmetry. Everything is dead center in the room. Like, they designed the production design and the production design and the choice of all the things that are on the camera and how actors are oriented are based on like the symmetrical space. And they spend a lot of time, especially nowadays, like, we're going to pick we have a room. Okay, well, let's move everything around so we can put the camera exactly where Wes wants it. Like, the intentionality Like he designs spaces to suit. And in this film, also there's very realistic lighting. Like there's never like a lighting choice where you feel like, where's that light coming from? You know, it's always like if there's a window, that's what's coming of it. There's a fireplace. It's very naturalistic, but at the same time stylized. I think a lot of people would think when they say Wes Anderson's cinematography, they're really talking about the editing and the production design. Like the rhythm of how he cuts scenes together is what makes it feel that way. Like the shot of the insert perfectly above the hands cut with the hyper symmetrical choices sort of creates that effect. I think people misinterpret, like it's not like a cinematography thing. It's a cinematography, production design, actor blocking, all of these things coming together. And really him knowing how it's going to edit together in the end. That's why Wes Anderson does these elaborate animatics. He pre-edits the entire movie like ages before they spend a dime on production. Like he thinks for the edit. And I feel like most directors aren't that intentional, and that's why he's so different.
The titles, the month titles were very Wes Anderson too.
Yeah.
You know how they did that? They put a real curtain on front of the camera. So like in that first one outside the school gates, they put a curtain outside the school gates, and they just sort of.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
The color palette is absolutely beautiful. The other thing I just want to follow up, I think I agree with everything Adam said about the cinematography, the look of it, the set design. You never are. You kind of don't know the camera's there, and it made me think of Scorsese. A lot of times uses the camera as a character. So when he does those whip pans, you're like, oh shit, okay, you know. And so Scorsese is saying to you, I'm thinking of the Departed, but a lot of Casino, certainly. Casino uses the camera. You know it's there, and Wes Anderson says, that's too. I'm keeping this very. I wear a corduroy suit, man. I don't do anything fancy.
I feel like he's very influenced by plays, like his sets. Also, the wide angle lenses. Like you never feel like, you know how in TV you just feel like you see the actors' faces like floating around and everything's out of focus because you don't know where the fuck they are. You never have that feeling in a West. You see everything. There's a orientation. You see the characters in their environments. It's actually very rare when you have an extreme close-up. I actually remember the one extreme close-up in the movie. It's when he's turning around and everybody's cheering him with the flowers, with the bloody nose. Like, I can't think of another extreme close-up in the entire movie. You know where everybody is the whole time.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
There was another interesting comment
it's a beautiful
earlier.
film. Yeah, what was that?
There you go. Rich said, love the tendency for Wes to make children the adults in many films, which I definitely think is like a story choice that he tends to fall back
It is
on.
for sure. I think sometimes there's a crutch. I think it's easy to make things like, ooh, isn't that interesting and whimsical? Like, I'm not as much a fan of Moonrise Kingdom as some people are. Like, I thought that's a film where it was the first Wes Anderson film I watched where I was like, okay, he's got a bag of tricks and he's going to the well, you know.
I've never seen that film. Is it worth?
It's good. It is worth seeing, John. It's not as good as Grand Budapest Hotel. My issue with it is you see what he was trying to do, and what he was trying to do was very interesting. But like usually, it's the magic trick works. I don't know. Some people love that movie. I just thought it was a little too. The idea is like two like an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old run away together in like the 60s, and like they have this grand romance, and they're like pen pals, and like all the adults on the island are like looking for them, and like they've got this great like camping imagery, Boy Scouts, like a Boy Scout on the run. It's good. It's just not as, it doesn't work as well.
It felt very much like what you were saying. I could tell what he was trying to do, and it felt kind of like in my face for a lot of the time in a way that Grand Budapest Hotel didn't. Like it felt more like I was seeing the wires than usual with him. But it was I think that was my first Wes Anderson movie. And I've told that story. The movie theater broke. Yeah.
Grand Budapest Hotel is magic for me. I've
I
seen
love
it
that movie.
5 times, and every time I watch it, there again. I mean, what he does, he says, "I'm going to create a world, and you will immerse yourself into this world, and you're going to live here until the film's over." And
it's a $30 million movie that looks like $100 million movie.
Oh my god!
Like it's kind of like Arrival. It's sort of like, wow, this feels like, how did you make this happen? Because I see, Justice League looks like a piece of shit compared to, like in some ways, you know what I mean? Like some of these superhero movies are so like lazily put together. Like it's like, okay, they put an ocean, they threw up a giant green screen. Robert Downey Jr. fucked around for 15 minutes, and then they just had like this visual effects companies like make these environments for them. You don't even know if the actors know where they are. Sorry, I'm being
judgy of superhero movies.
Somebody had a good question here. I thought Max Fisher was pretending to be an adult. Corbin.
He disagrees that. Yeah, I feel like he's just a kid.
He does write a lot of characters who are like kids who are very what's that word where you act older?
Self-aware or
No. It's the one word like where a kid is like really like acting really mature, precocious. Isn't that kind precocious. Of it? Like you have like a lot like that tends to be like he tends to do like smart young characters, and Max Fisher is definitely a kid pretending to emotionally understand being an adult. But a lot of his behavior is very adult-like, even though he's an emotionally there, and sort of that dissonance is what makes him an interesting character, I think. Theo, precocious. Yeah, that's the one. But yeah, I think that's kind of sometimes the characters are treated like adults. But I think it's usually like a disconnect, like that on some level the kid is not fully a kid, and then put inside these situations it feels like whimsical that they're like have this one like really, really adult tendency or like aspect of their personalities. Every
once in a while I get a student like that, and it's hysterical,
John, I have a question for you. Do you get a lot of students who mention Wes Anderson?
Mm-mm.
That's interesting.
Mm-mm.
That's interesting.
No.
It's Tarantino, Adam. Tarantino or bust.
Here's a axe I've got to grind. I think Tarantino and Wes Anderson are very similar writer-directors. Like they're both they're interested in past cinema. They're both heavily referenced. Like they reference other films, and they intentionally have a bag of tricks, and they have very unique writing styles. Like they just have different genres and different styles and different personalities and values. But like functionally, they're both like auteurs with a very individualistic voice. A Tarantino movie 5 seconds, right? But like people talk about Tarantino like he's a genius all the time, and they don't talk about Wes Anderson. I think Wes Anderson's such a better craftsman and way more thoughtful and cares about character more.
He's a more mature and thoughtful human being.
Maybe that's it.
So that's not as appealing to. Remember, I mean, my students they're children, so they don't know that, but they, an 18-year-old boy,
Alexie, you feel like you're about to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd say Tarantino is much more appealing to teenage boys.
That's fair.
In general, it's like it's bloody and like very male gaze, and in a way that Wes Anderson is more is not. This one felt a little bit like boyish.
It does creep in, like
that's what I mean. Like it's a little boyish.
Creeps in here and there. I think Wes Anderson's has a few weaknesses as a writer, and it doesn't show up here as much. But like later on, I think he others people. Like sometimes he uses like non-white people as props. Like Darjeeling Limited is really egregious of this. Like it's like, oh, look at these white trust fund guys who have like these like family problems, and like, oh, isn't it cute? They're in an Indian village, and it's like, wait, this kid, like, there's a scene, spoiler, well, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a horrible thing happens towards the end of the movie, and you're like, oh my God. And then they just go on as if nothing happened. Like, sort of like, they don't really consider, like, there's like, it's weird. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't like that film very much, but,
I've not seen that one.
yeah, not good. Life Aquatic is
Yeah.
interesting. John, what do you think about Life Aquatic?
Interesting. I haven't seen it in years. The first time I saw
It
it, I
doesn't
think
work.
I've seen it. Huh?
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work, and it's you know, he's such a great filmmaker that sometimes you go to a Wes Anderson and you go, I'm going to go because he's trying something. He misses. Sometimes he misses.
Yeah.
So I mean, Ang Lee is another filmmaker that's not talked about enough. Ang Lee is able to go, I think, into any genre he wants.
Yeah, he is an amazing,
he's a rare director, but he has a very mature sensibility. And
he went to NYU, right?
I think so.
Oh, that sounds right.
And he's an auteur. I mean, he's a great filmmaker. One of the few people you won't see his stamp. You won't see his imprint on a film, because if he switches genres, he goes to that. He's able to, I mean, it's magic. He's a chameleon. He can do anything.
Yeah. But he's not a writer, is he?
No, the guy he uses is, what's his name? Where's the bow tie? What's his name? I can see his face. He teaches up at Columbia. Huh?
Who directs for Ang Lee?
No, who writes for Ang Lee?
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see.
What's his name? Samus. So James, what's his name? James Seamus. And he
Seamus. SCHAMUS.
Yeah, James Seamus. Yeah. He writes a lot for they had a company together. Mm-hmm. But and Seamus can switch gears also. But they worked a lot together. But there's a Civil War film, the Wild I forget the name of that. The Hulk. I mean, he can do
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh God,
it's a great movie.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
So anyway,
so bring it back to Wes Anderson for a second.
Yeah,
and this movie specifically.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't read this screenplay, this is a particularly good one. Like, it's Wes Anderson early in his career before he had power and was trying to prove himself. Like, it really is the movie on the page in a pleasing way, and it focuses on what's important. From a writing point of view, what I think people can learn from him, and this movie in particular, is his clarity. When you read a scene by him, the elements that are on the page are all important. Like, he shows and he doesn't tell, but he shows what's important. You know, like there's a very clear sense of, like, okay, this is who Dirk is, and this is information that's going to come out later. Like, there's no wasted information. There are moments that are just jokes, sure, but like, there are jokes, and then there's plot information, and then there's stuff about Max's life. There isn't a lot of other information in the movie that's not that, and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, if you want to check out the script, it's in the link. The link's in the description of this video. We have a link to the script, and I'm going to be adding Adam's breakdown to it after we're done here.
So many great one-liners, like, I saved Latin. What did you ever do? Is such a good line. Oh, and with friends like you, who needs friends?
Who needs friends? I mean, I still die when I hear that line. I still wait for him to say who needs it. I mean, I'm like, I know what he's going to say. And then he doesn't. And he says friends. And I'm going, shit, it still gets me.
Yeah, it's pretty great. You know, something interesting was that the subtitles didn't line up with what they were saying. And it made me wonder if it was an earlier draft that they gave to the people to subtitle, or what happened there. But it was a little interesting.
Were you watching it on Amazon Prime?
Yeah. Yeah, it was off in like It was like, but it was like meaningfully off in like quite a few ways. Like the lines were like completely restructured and things, which was interesting.
Another great line. I may not be rich, Mr. Bloom. My father may only be a surgeon, but we manage.
He's so crazy. And yet we believe him. I believe this kid, you know. I'm afraid he's going to walk into my class.
That would be great.
I keep looking for a kid in a blue blazer and say, no.
Surprised you haven't had this kid yet.
By the way, I've had versions of this kid. I had a kid, he's a freshman. He said, Mr. Warren, can I come in? I said, sure, great. And I can tell, I can smell it. And he said, and he's a freshman. And he said, I'm going to start a production company. And I'm just going to do like $4 million films.
That's great.
And if you have students that have scripts that you think would be right for me.
He's a freshman?
He's 12. 12 years old. I'm sitting there, I'm like this. I keep a straight face the whole time. I'm so good. I just go.
Is he rich? I don't know. Like, does he have?
No, he's just an idiot. And so I just go, okay. And I say, but he says, I only want to work with really good people. Man, get the fuck out of here, you know. But it's, I mean, and by the way, I'm not making any of that up. This kid is sitting right. He was sitting right there, and then there was this thing. I'm sorry, I'm going on about this. Then there was some kind of school thing, end of year, freshman year. This is obviously before COVID, it was a few years ago, and there's some function, you know. Congratulations on making it through your first year. And he comes over and goes, "Oh, hey, John." I'm like, wow, man, I love this kid. Hey, John. Oh, yeah. He says, this is my dad. And I have to meet his old man. And I go, hi, it's very nice to meet you. And he said, so-and-so loves school. He's doing really well here. And I remember looking at father and thinking, are you as full of shit as he is? I wonder where could he have gotten it if not for you? And I said, oh, God. Somebody's calling me. It's really nice to meet okay, you. Yeah. Yes. Somebody's calling me. I got to jump, but really lovely to meet you.
It's amazing how non-self-aware people are. This film kind of actually speaks on that because the film is about why he is this way, right? It's about he's basically afraid of being ordinary. So many people are, though.
Yes,
especially young men. The lives of young men are basically the fear of being ordinary. And I actually, can I get on my soapbox for a minute? I think philosophically, one of the things we've done wrong in, our Western, culture, whatever, is that in all of the media, we constantly tell people being ordinary, an ordinary life is the worst thing. Like, you have to be great. You have to be exceptional. You have to have $1 million. You have to have a giant house. You have to have the car. You have to have the job. You can't just be a writer. You've got to be a successful writer. You can't just be a musician. You've got to be a successful musician. For example, there's so many people in America, when you meet them, they ask, what do you do? And they make an assessment of, are you important for me to know? If you aren't that, I shouldn't associate with you. If you say, I'm a garbage man, or something that they perceive as is not special or interesting or great or of a social class that they are, they make a social judgment. And this film subtly is a little bit about that. Sort of like Max is so afraid of being seen as, I'm a barber's son. I'm a barber's son. Oh my God. No, I'm a brain doctor. My safety school's Harvard. I'm special. I do 50 extracurricular activities. So many young men are like this, though. Yeah, and young women, just people. They're like, I can't be an artist unless I'm a successful artist. I can't, you saw all these obnoxious people on Twitter talking about these false perceived successes or whatever. And it's like, I don't know. My opinion is it's okay to be ordinary. What's wrong with being ordinary? Most people are.
Yeah, that's why it's called ordinary. Yeah, but, it's.
Sorry, off my soapbox.
Well, I think this answers the question. What is the subject of this movie in one sentence? It's like the fear of being ordinary is one way to put it.
Julie's got a great line. You're absolutely right. The line where he says, "War does funny things to men." I just split my scenes. Sure.
One of my favorite lines is the scene early on with his dad when they're walking home, And it's after the thing of being like, maybe I should stop having so many clubs. Maybe I should just spend more time getting with chicks. That's the only thing people care about. And then he goes in the house and his dad says, "You're like one of those clipper ship captains. You're married to the sea." And he says, "I guess that's true, but I've been out to sea for a long time." Like, that line is amazing. I don't know.
I don't think Corbin.
No.
I don't think Max is no, and I don't. And I
No, definitely not.
Max. I think Max will be. Has the opportunity in adulthood to be successful because I think this is him. I think he's going to keep bullshitting and bullshitting and bullshitting. I mean, Bernie Madoff. He could be Bernie Madoff.
Yeah, Wes Anderson said it. That was asked this question, like, where do you think Max Fisher was going to end up? He said, paraphrasing, he's going to be one of those lying bohemian types in New York who, grounders together productions. He's going to work in theater. He said lying bohemian types, and I thought that was great.
I love that.
That's pretty great.
That. And in Hollywood, you meet a lot of these. Yeah, a lot. Yeah, you meet this guy. You will meet, if you're in Hollywood long enough, you will meet this guy, and they're fantastic. And sometimes, and maybe this is my flaw or my perversity, is sometimes I'll sit in meetings with these guys because I'm just mesmerized. I'm just enamored with, wow, do you think I believe what you're saying? And it was so much fun. I won't go into it, but there's a guy not too long ago who said to me, I'm going to he said to me, I'm going to start a film production. No shit, I'm not making this up. He said the State Department is financing a film. The State Department is financing a film production company in the Mideast that I'll run. I can only pay you $25,000 a script. And I said, I'll have to get back to you on that one. The guy was lying. I knew the guy. I've known the guy for 25 years. The guy's just a big liar. But when he said the State Department, I just thought, yeah, I mean, it's just the most beautiful. I mean, I sat there at breakfast one morning and I thought, I don't want this breakfast to end because this guy is just too beautiful. And I said very delicately, I said, I don't think I can get into that. I'm too overwrought, my teaching schedule. And about 2 hours later, he called me in my office and he said, and I realized that when he got back to his office, he realized that I had said no, and he was offended by that. So he called me. This is a true story. He called me 2 hours after the breakfast and said, John, I don't think it's going to work. And I was like, I said no, and now you're firing me. You are beautiful. This guy's a gem. This guy, I can't get it. My wife is like, I don't want to have dinner with him and his wife. I said, no, they're too much fun. But anyway, sorry, I went off on a little, huh?
Should we talk about next week?
Should I shut up? Yeah.
No, it's great. I love liars.
I don't think anybody can find this film, but if you can find it, it's hard to find. The Flamingo Kid. The Flamingo Kid is a really wonderful film about a young man, somewhat lost, false mentor. It's
Promising Young Woman.
It's what's his name? He died. It's Jerry. What's his name? The director, Gary Marshall. Gary Marshall directed. If any of you can find it, The Flamingo Kid is a really good film, and it's not this world, but it's got similar qualities. Now, Alexie, what were you going to? With Matt Dillon. Have you seen it, Spencer?
We shall see.
We should see. That's it, though, with Matt Dillon. Matt Dillon was a kid. Yeah, it's great.
The animated Animal Farm movie was financed by the CIA. That's why it ends with the Americans saving the day. Film's powerful.
Maybe it's my buddy.
Time people accept it. So next week we are doing Promising Young Woman, which is going to be fun.
I love this film.
I haven't seen it, so I'm looking forward to it. It's great.
But I know that I think it's like one of our most recent, like one of our films that we've done like
Fine. Yeah.
pretty
And
quick
it's-
after. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really good.
Any words on what people should look for, John?
Third act. The third act is brilliant choices. Absolutely brilliant choices.
And this is
all
another
I'll say.
writer-director.
Right.
What's with all these writer-directors making good movies? It's kind of
Damn
annoying,
it.
you know?
Damn it.
Emerald Fennell, I think. So you say her last name? I'm not sure, but
No,
I'm excited.
I think that's something you have before the entree. Adam
I
can't
don't
even
know.
give me a laugh. Adam's like, "No, I'm not gonna go there."
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah,
Adam's tired. Adam's done.
I am tired, but I'm okay. I'm okay. I did not sleep. I've not slept in 24 hours.
Oh God. Okay. Well,
Yeah, because I was
Ooh.
feeling sick last night, so I was like,
That's the
but
perfect
you know when
way
you
to evaluate films when you're a little delirious.
well, that's why when I was this morning when I was going through the act one of this, I thought I was like having like a stroke or something. I was like, wait, are we in act two? And I paused and I was like, I thought I was at the midpoint of the movie and I was 30 minutes in.
Oh,
And
man.
I got thrown by the aquarium, and I haven't seen the movie in like 8 years. So I was like, wait, this is a 90-minute movie. And that's exactly what we were talking about earlier about like it's a 30-minute story in some ways.
Yeah.
This is a very funny question here. It's a bit off topic, but can you tell me how Psycho works?
It doesn't really.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Well,
No,
But
it's not
by the way,
traditionally.
no, that's a full session. That's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love that film, but that's a whole. There are books written on it, so no, we can't. Yeah.
It's very
Takes a little-
I've not
for
seen
me.
it.
Oh, you have not?
I'm not really a horror person.
Gotcha. It's not
So-
going
It's
to
Hitchcock.
convert you. It's not going to convert you. Like, I think there's better Hitchcock. That's my opinion. And I'm not a big Hitchcock fan. But I do think the one thing, the short answer I would say is, you know how like there are films that are like character based and there are films that are like situation based. That's a
Mhm.
film that is 100% situation based. And there is no real character arc that's meaningful. It's all about the information and the twist of like of what's happening and why is
Reversal.
the energy of the film. So that's why it does what it does. I do think that is like there are 1,000 bad films that try to do that for every one that succeeds.
Yeah.
People have mentioned Rear Window, which is my favorite Hitchcock, and we could do. Have we done Rear Window? Rear Window? We did.
Yeah, we did. We did.
We did.
We did it
I
like early.
love,
Yeah.
love Rear Window. Love Rear Window.
Oh yeah, it's Rear Window's really good. I always liked Vertigo, but only because it's so fucking weird. It's a weird movie.
I have not
Is it-
seen it.
The other one to put on your list with Hitchcock is it's either Rope or The Rope. I know.
Rope is really good.
Rope is great.
The thing about it is it's the conceit of the film is that it's one continuous take. So it's one shot. I mean, they hide the cuts by every time it goes by like a flower vase, like it's obvious. But
The camera's on a dolly track.
yeah,
And it's all shot in one room.
and the blocking is amazing. Like
Amazing. It's amazing.
it's kind of a modern versions of that, like Birdman. Like yeah, it's a cool, but it's one of those films that sort of like how they're doing it is more interesting than the story.
It's where I took my wife to see that on our first date.
Really?
Yeah. And if you see
Jesus.
it, you're gonna wonder why she married me. But yeah, because it's like not a first. It's like it's the worst first date film ever. But it worked. What can I tell you?
All right. Well, on that note,
Yeah.
I'm women next week.
Be a
Alexie,
good one.
or no, John's gonna break it down.
I'll break it.
Exciting. I'm sick
John's
of breaking
gonna
down
break
movies.
it. Yeah. Yeah, you've done 2 in a row now. So
Yeah, I need a break.
Break. Okay.
see you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Adios.